The story then, the story of you begins with you discovering this voice that you had when you were belting out songs in front of the bathroom mirror with your hair up in the towel and waking up your mother who was on night shifts. This is when you're 6 years of age, so you discovered this voice early.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember I was around that age that I started singing, and people were like, they started telling my dad, they were like, your daughter can like sing, like she has a voice. And my dad was always into music and he liked to sing. And so I think once he heard that, he was like, he was already encouraging me to like be brave and go sing in front of people. Like I have videos when I was like really little where he'd be like, with all the kids, and he'd be like, go sing, go sing. And then I'd be like, I'll do it. Like, so, he was always kind of encouraging me to be, brave like that.
So many,
So
or like so many, being in a musical house had a big effect. Your dad played harmonica. He had a studio. He had a great record collection, and like you said, you were encouraged.
I was a lot. It just was always around me growing up, and especially the blues. The blues was really like when we moved to Oregon. I was born in Pennsylvania, and then we moved to Oregon when I was about 8. That's when my dad and my mom really got into blues music, and they were always listening to like Muddy Waters and Big Mama Thornton, Son House, and they just did like a deep dive into the blues. I think they always loved rock and roll before that, but that's really when they went into the blues. So it was very influential on me from a very young age, listening to the blues and that being played around the house. My dad was playing, I have videos, being like 7 years old. My dad's playing harmonica with a fedora on, and I've got a fedora on next to him playing harmonica. Like, it's at that age when your parents get into something actually. You do, So.
Yeah. But you weren't just listening to the blues, though, were you? Or rock music, but also other non-related genres like hip-hop, stayed in your brother's CD collection, pop, and even country has helped you develop and craft this sound that you now have.
Yeah, absolutely. I love great songs, and, sometimes I love like a great beat. It just depends, what it is, what I like. I think that, throughout my career, there's always been a backbone of blues, because when I grew up singing in a blues band, those are the songs I learned how to sing, and so I think that style has always been a part of my music, but kind of, at different points in my career, it's been mixed with hip hop, or rock music. This project that I've just done, my new album Liberation, is definitely is the most straight up blues music that I've done since I was a kid.
The musical heroes for you, such as they were, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Joni Mitchell, you mentioned, and David Bowie was another one. Those who tell a story, as well as artists that you say dared to be original. I mean, you don't get much more original than David Bowie, and who write their own songs, don't sing other people's stuff. So, I mean, this is an eclectic, but incredibly iconic list of artists.
Yeah. It really is, what I kind of grew up to admire, and the artists that I listen to is, just being authentic to their story and really being unforgiving when it comes to making the music that they want to make, it's not always easy to do that. You would think that, oh yeah, just make the kind of music you want to make, but people start getting in your ear, in the industry and whatever, and they can really get you off course from what your gut and what your heart is telling you to do. You have to it's a really fine line as an artist, I think, being able to listen to what people have to say and see if there's value in the feedback they're giving you. but
Absolutely.
also stay strong with what you want. And this list of these artists you just were talking about, these are people that I feel like really knew how to walk that balance.
So, do you have a clear recollection then of the day that you sang in front of people for the very first time at Albert King's, as years go passing by? Do you remember it? Have clear memories, or is it a bit hazy?
It's a bit hazy. I remember different moments, like where I would sing, like, because when I was singing growing up, like, I was in a very rural area. So when I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
sing in front of people, it would be like if the blues band had a gig or if there was some talent show. Like any talent show there was, I was singing in it. And so those moments were like, because I wasn't singing all the time, I'd be like, you know, so I remember different moments going up and singing like that. But I remember it was always blues songs, which definitely
Yeah, yeah.
made me a little bit of like, what is this little girl singing? Like she's always singing like, Otis Redding or Albert King. It's like,
Did your friends not think this is like, who is she? Who is she listening? But I mean, I do know, by the way, that you had a big thing about the Spice Girls, didn't you? You could belt, you literally, every lyric of every song. But
it's one of those. It's one of those
odd?
albums that it was like the Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill, and the Spice Girls. Where like I was in 5th grade, and like we were literally just like knew every word to those songs. So they come on to this day, and I'm just like, when to become one. Like I know all the lyrics.
Have you ever met any of them? Have you ever met?
No, I haven't.
The story then behind the fedoras, unsurprisingly, you have nerve. I mean, everybody would have gone on the stage, but you said that the fedora sort of gave you confidence that you could be somebody bigger. And once you put it on, that was it. It's stayed with you ever since. And you now, was it Neiman Marcus that you now actually design your own for?
Well, I was actually, it wasn't even through a company. I was just doing, I make fedoras. I can make my own hats. I block them. I sew them. I design them. If you go to my website, you'll see the ones that sold out. I don't really do it anymore because once I had my second kid, I was like, okay, what are my priorities here? I don't know that I can be a mom, make music, and be a milliner. And so I think I kind of had to be like, you know what, when I have a little bit more free time, I'll get back into the hats.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it was fun. And and people were getting them, which was really cool. And I know how to make them. So, but no, I kind of stopped doing that for a little bit.
So you were discovered then, you can confirm whether this is true, by Evan, who is now your husband, on MySpace.
Yeah.
Now, he had something of an eye for talent, didn't he? Having spotted Eminem when he was 19. So how did that happen then? He spots you, he gets in touch. Did you think this is a crank on the end of the phone or what?
I was really excited at first. I remember I got an email and it was like, it was also before the time of like, I don't know, like social media wasn't as, I mean, I guess these days you'd send someone a DM on Instagram, but this was like a formal email that was like, hey, I saw your music on MySpace. I think he wrote me on MySpace too, but I didn't check it. And then I looked him up and I was like, oh my God, like this guy's a big songwriter. Like he's legit. He wrote Halo by Beyonce. Like
got a Grammy as well, didn't he?
He wrote Halo, he wrote SOS. And I was like, wow, like I had a couple other opportunities going on at the time, because I had finally moved to the city for the first time and was playing out a lot. And so now things were actually really starting to happen for me. But I got this email and I was like, wow. And then I tried to meet up with him and have a meeting like 3 times and he stood me up like 3 times. And I was like, forget this guy. I'm like, I'm not meeting with this guy.
Do you still remind him about that today? The 3 standing
Yeah, I do. I tell him, I'm like, and it's funny because he's still, he's doing a million things at once and he's got, he's got a publishing company now and he's got so many projects going on. That's so Evan to think that like 12 years ago, he was like, I can't do the meeting today, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh, whatever. And then so I got together with him. I went to the studio with him, and he had like a bunch of maybe like 4 other writers that we met with at the time that were like his kind of crew. And I just played all of my songs. And I had like, I don't know, 10 or not 10. I had probably 25 songs that I was just like, I'd play them on guitar and then piano and whatever. And I remember being like, do you guys want to hear more? And they were like, no, like we get it. We got it. Like they kind of could tell from hearing me, like, I think Evan could tell, like, there's something there, but like, as like professional songwriters, they could probably tell that there was, some things they probably thought could be better about the stuff that I was writing. But they could tell that I had genuine talent. So I started working with Evan, and what Evan did was Evan put me in with a bunch of songwriters like all over LA. And those sessions really, it was like going to college for songwriting. You know what I mean? Like suddenly, like, what you know how to do. And then you're writing with people that are like really pros and like really good. And so I was just absorbed and like learning everything I could. And yeah. I think I've heard another artist say this before, where you go into a session to write a song as an artist, and then you leave and you go, I'm going to write something better than that. And that's kind of what pushed me to write my first album. It was like I had gone in with all these writers and written a bunch of songs and learned so much, but then went, I can do this better by myself. I'm going to go write these songs. And that's kind of how I did my first album. So
there's a great backstory to Evan as well, because Neil, his father, founded Casablanca Records back in 73. They signed Kiss on for the first time before they went disco and Donna Summer and Village People. And then he moved on to Boardwalk Records, Night Ranger and Joan Jett and all of that. So, I mean, what that family didn't know about music probably wasn't worth knowing. Really?
Yeah, it's really wild.
I mean, there must be some great dinner table conversations about, back in the day when Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley came around to the house. I mean, it must be incredible.
Yes, so many. And, Evan's father, Neil, passed away when Evan was 4 years old.
Yeah.
So, Neil is like the legend we all hear about. And, we have so many memories, from awards that Neil won to videos of him, being like on the Johnny Carson show. And like, so we have a lot of great memories from Neil. And then Joyce, Evan's mother, was also in the business, and she managed Kiss and Donna Summers. So, it's really interesting. I think that my life is so unconventional with touring and playing music, and I just kind of fit right in with Evan and his family, because they're just so used to like the craziness of the music industry, and just that it's normal in some way,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like Evan's mom is just a wealth of knowledge. She's tough. She's brilliant. And, and so yeah, it's a pretty wild family to meet and then grow to be a part of. Yeah.
That first album, then, Till the Casket Drops, created a lot of waves. And when you look at the cast, obviously including Kendrick Lamar, the reviews are mostly 4 and 5 star. You've got 3 hit singles. I mean, this is some output for a debut album. Usually this is what you would expect. Maybe on your 3rd or 4th album, you've got it right from the get-go. You have people raving about this blend of styles. We've not heard this before. I mean, did it surprise you? I mean, obviously you knew you had a good product, but were you surprised at just how well it went down?
Yeah, it was like a whirlwind. When that album came out, I was not expecting what happened. That was like it was just like that moment for me when, like, you go from nobody knowing you to like everybody knowing you.
Yeah,
I mean, it was really wild, and it was a dream come true. That's always what I wanted to do with music. I always wanted to make it in music, and I felt like for one, I felt like I was, but also like when it rains, it pours. I mean, like it was like you don't have much time to think about what's going on because it's like you're on this late night show and you're on this late night show and then you're on the road and then you're at South by Southwest and then you're doing festivals and then you're doing morning radio and it's like you just hit it really hard, you know? Yeah, so it was wild. It was a very impactful album. I mean, at this point it was what, I think almost 12 years ago. And like,
yeah, it's incredible. What was the story behind the title of the album, by the way, Till the Casket Drops?
Yeah.
What was the story behind the title of the album? Where did you come up with that
story? I wrote the album about like my tribulation, my like, you know, my ups and downs with being in the relationship that I was in. And it was a crazy relationship at the time. And it was very emotional. And so I had a lot of stuff to write about.
Yeah.
And like the title was just kind of like through all of this craziness, you know, I'm going to be with you until the day that I die, till the casket drops. Like that was, you know, and it's an interesting album because there's a lot of songs where like if they're not all love songs. It's like they are and they're not, you know. I mean, there's different sides to that whole thing, as you know. So, but that's where the album title came from, yeah.
So the press full of compliments. There's comparisons. Everybody loves a comparison, don't they? So, you know, Amy Winehouse, a folksy Adele. I don't quite get that one. The New York Times, though, compared you to Tina Turner, Aretha Franklin, Etta James. So there isn't too much pressure on you from those. I mean, because we're not talking about some backstreet magazine. This is the New York Times. You know, these are seasoned writers. These are people that have been there, done it before. They've heard everybody. For them to come out and say, this is Tina Turner, Aretha Franklin. Apart from the fact it must have made you feel good, did it add pressure?
I think it definitely added pressure. But I don't think that like those specific comparisons added pressure. I think what added pressure was more, I think when you have success as an artist, it's really tricky because the way that I got to that first album was that like I wrote that album before I was even signed to a label. And then I went to the label with the album and they heard it and were like, this is amazing. So that when you turn around to do your second project, there's a bunch of people involved now that like weren't involved before. And so that coming into play with outside pressure, yes, that made me feel a lot of pressure because it was like, what are you gonna do now? Like, how are you gonna up this? You know,
I mean, I was amazed that it was 5 years before the follow-up came out, the Storm, which gave you the #1 blues album. Again, you've got big name collaborations here. Gary Clark Jr.'s on guitar. You've got fantastic Negrito on vocals here as well. So why was it such a long period? I mean, I know you were touring, obviously, but you know, it's 5 years is a long time.
Absolutely. Because I wrote a bunch of stuff and then it didn't come out.
Right.
And that has to do with, you know, so interesting because I remember the first song that I wrote after Till the Casket Drops was like, I've heard it since. Did I ever put it out? I did put it out. It's a song called Bag of Bones. And if you listen to Bag of Bones, I think it's on the Storm. It's very reminiscent of Till the Casket Drops. After I wrote Till the Casket Drops, Bag of Bones was the first song I wrote after. And then when I let a couple people listen to that song that were like kind of involved in the project at that time, I remember somebody was like, this sounds a lot like the first album. That was what they said. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, then like, what should I be doing something else? You know what I mean? Like, should I not be?
Yeah.
So it's like that influence getting in your head and just like messing with your flow. And so I was writing just a ton of stuff. And then I think I was just reaching a little bit outside myself being like, what do you think about this? And then it was like, oh, well, if you know, that influence loves this, and that must be what I should do, which is just, that's how 5 years goes by, because you're kind of like not sure what you should do, and like you're not just doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of kind of why that took so long.
I've got to mention the image and the style. You've worked hard on this. You love fashion. You're trying to create this unique look. It never is easy to do this, to create something that's stylish, that makes you stand out from a crowd, but which has a timeless feel to it, something that isn't going to go out of fashion. But you've managed to do this, and you're keeping stuff in the family as well, because you've got your brothers, you've got Adam and Charlie working on your videos and the photography, and together you've managed to blend this style and look, which is very unique.
Yeah. Do you mean from like what aspect do you mean? What would you
visually
say?
So the album covers, the photographs of you, all the photography that goes, you know, when you appear in magazine shoots, etc., etc.
Yeah.
You know, this, because you're big into fashion, aren't you?
I think that, you know, at this point, it's interesting. In a lot of ways, I'm like the creative director for my visuals and my project. And, you know, I'm so fortunate that I have my brother Adam and my brother Charlie to help me out with things. I mean, we just shot a new music video the other day. We just went downtown, and it was me and Adam and Charlie and like two of our friends. We shot a bunch of photography, and yeah, I think that it's just something I think you have to think of it as an artist, like how the visuals to your music like match, you know, and like how you continually create that environment, I think, for people that are going to listen to your music. You know, it's definitely changed and evolved a little bit over the years, but, you know, I think that the good thing is consistency. So if I'm consistently shooting with my brothers, you know, we kind of have a vibe going, and that's similar to production, I think, also in a way. I mean, you look at somebody like, this is a totally, you know, random thought, but like you look at somebody like Billie Eilish, who has like her brother producing her music, right?
Yeah, sure.
And she's always working with her brother that's producing her music. So her sound is very, very consistent, you know? I think that has a lot to do with that. So
last 6 or 7 years, you've taken some pretty big decisions in life. We've had the pandemic to contend with, and then you're at home researching female artists who tour with children, and before long you have 2 sons arriving, and life is altogether very different. Was it still, I mean, you obviously know it's going to be different, but was it still a considerable shock to the system to find out just how different it was?
My first child was a real shock. It was, you know, it's funny because I don't know, for me, like, I'm very open about that. And I write about it in my new album Liberation a lot too, where it's like, you just, you know, like this song I'm putting out, this Friday, actually, I'm putting out this song called Naked in the Jungle. And a lot of times what I do, it's just like I wrote a song called Put the Gun Down. It's like I'll kind of put words to a feeling that's very, very strong. That is it, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like you have a dream, and your dream, it's crazy. The dream is not what you're necessarily going through in real life, but it goes to those core feelings, and it just like it makes them huge, you know. And so Naked in the Jungle was how I felt when I had my first child, Ezra. I felt like I was just dropped in the jungle naked with, like, you know, no tools or defenses, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And that's what I felt like. And so, you know, that's the beauty of being an artist, is that those feelings don't get forgotten, you know.
Yeah, sure.
I remember them, or I write them down somewhere maybe, and then I put them in music, and I hope that they connect with other people, you know.
So that brings us to Liberation. This is where I've always wanted to be, a blues artist on my terms. That's your quote. And listening through the album, it is exactly that. I mean, it's a fabulous album. But what are you feeling liberated or liberation from?
I mean, I guess from myself in a way, which is weird, you know? I mean, you'd think it would be outside. Mostly it is outside influences, but at the core of that, it's myself, right? Because it's, which I've never actually said before out loud, but through talking to you, it's making me realize it's like, you know, it's just really being liberated to just all of it. I mean, there was a time in my life before I had Ezra where I knew my future as a human being was that I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be a parent, but I felt so scared of that and what that would make me look like, you know, to people and like how that would change my life, what that would do to my music career. And then you just do it. And so writing this album after going through that experience and also going deeper into the music that I want to make, it just feels liberating. It feels powerful. I feel more powerful than I ever have been before.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you said I didn't plan to make a blues album about motherhood, but it just sort of happened. But there's so much subject matter there, isn't there? You know, from, you know, starting a family and having a family, that you're sure to never run out of things to write about.
Yeah, and I mean, the depths of what that new balance changes, you know, it changes your relationship with your partner. It changes you. I mean, there's, like you said, it's an endless amount of things to write about and just gives you a lot more, you know, yeah, exactly.
Words to describe the feel of the album. So foot-stomping, rootsy, vintage, sassy, rock and soul. That's good. Turbocharged blues. Those all sort of perfectly sum up the sound. I think everybody's got that fairly nailed on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, I knew that I wanted to make a blues album. I did not know what I was going to write about. That was something that I definitely just kind of came very natural. And I remember as I started to write it about parts of it about motherhood, I remember being like, you know, going to Ryan, who's producing it, and Evan, and being like, can I talk about this stuff? Like, is this too like specific to like my life? And they were so encouraging about like, no, you should, you know, just tell your story. You should tell your story. And so, but as far as like, you know, what's been said about it and things like that so far, because it's not even out yet, it was really important to me to create a sonic environment that really felt good.
Yeah,
and felt
it does that.
And felt vintage and felt like it was taking you to a different time. And there's so many different ways to do that. You know, you can easily make things too slick. I mean, production in general, like you can go to somebody to produce a song 20 different ways. And they can suck the life right out of it. Like if you put auto-tune on my voice, it just sucks the life out of my voice. Sure. And there are people that will still do that to this day if I go record with them. I'll listen to it and they threw, you know, 5 cents of auto-tune on my voice. And it's like, why would you do that? You know, it drives me crazy. But like, what I mean by that is like the artistry doesn't stop at writing the songs. And so for me and Ryan to really create this kind of like sonic feel to this whole album was definitely thought out. And I love the way that it turned out. Like when I listened to it, I feel like we really nailed transporting people to like, you know, a feeling in that time.
I got to say, it had the same effect when I put it on as when I put on Samantha Fish's Death Wish Blues, the album she did with Jesse Dayton a year ago, a year or more ago. You've taken this sort of classic blues sound and feel and developed a new modern take. You know, far too many of the artists that produce like blues or classic blues, it's like, one track is the same as the other, and it's like, yeah, they've just taken a sound, from 60 years ago and just repeated it there. But this is, it's new, it's vibrant. It is a blues album, but it's a blues album for today, not 40 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a
60
fine,
years ago.
yeah, that was a fine line, to walk. I think, there's, a lot of blues covers on there that are paying homage to songs that are just fantastic and I wanted to sing. And then there's and then there's originals on there as well. And kind of walking that line of keeping, a genre like the blues there, but also making it
Yeah.
unique. It's a very fine line. You have to be really conscious of,
Oh, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the 12 tracks on here and keeping the momentum going. 12 tracks, a lot of songs. It's not easy, but each track offers something, a little different. And often you'll get people or artists release the best tracks as singles first. But you get into, when you start to listen to the album, move away from the first four that have been released, you get into Liberation, Lioness, and you really are grinning on your face. And so there's never any time to be bored.
Yeah. Well,
not
you
be
can't
having
have
a good
anybody be
time.
bored. You can't have anybody be bored these days. We'll go to something else.
Yeah, no, they do. There's nothing superfluous whatsoever. 8 tracks under 3 minutes here, and the longest is 3:27. That old saying, isn't it? Don't bore us, get to the chorus. Yeah, I mean, it's it's great. Yeah, it really is, because you could. I mean, and that also opens up airplay possibilities, doesn't it? Because you can literally pick out every track, and it could be potentially played somewhere. So what was your favorite track?
I don't know. I like different ones. I like different ones for different reasons. I mean, I think like on the original side of things, it's tough. I really do love this whole album. I really love every song.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know that I can pick one, but it's fun, Sinner's Prayer. I think singing Sinner's Prayer was one for me that like I really love that song. I love listening to me singing that song. And I don't think that I have ever sang something like that on an album that I've put out before.
Yeah.
Singing something like that, and most of these songs is very much like the music that I grew up singing. And so to hear it now, I feel so proud that I actually just did it and said, F everybody else, I'm gonna do this. So
Do you know, there was one voice that came to me while I was listening to that I haven't heard anybody compare you to, and that was Dusty Springfield.
oh
Actually.
yeah, I've heard that before.
Oh, you have heard it before? Oh, yeah, because I was sitting there and I was thinking, my God, son of a preacher man's coming on in a minute.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. And people talk about the genres and the hip hop and the pop and the whatever, but there's a bit of Motown in there as well, isn't there?
Yeah,
Or is
there is
that
a
just
little.
me? I kept thinking it's 1968 here, and I get, which is a great thing, by the way.
No,
Sly and the Family
absolutely, and
Stone.
but that's the kind of stuff that I listen to. Like I love that kind of music. That makes me feel like that was when they were recording things, and it just like sounded so good, And then it's like you realize that people come up with more music technology where they think that things are quicker, easier, or less expensive, or there's no tape. You use a tape, and it's just like. There's different ways to achieve that sound now, but like that sound is so good. I love that. That's the kind of stuff that I listen to. So I'm love that you think that it sounds like that.
Clearly, then we have the best album of your career to date. So, what are the realistic expectations? Because you had, the debut album got all this massive coverage. Then you had the number one blues album with Storm. This should surpass those, shouldn't it?
I would love to have that expectation, but I don't want to be let down. I don't, do I think that it deserves that? I don't know. I don't look at things that way. I don't feel I want to look at the things that I can control. So like mommy going in and making a killer album after, having two babies and still being a great mom. Like that's the stuff that I can hold on to and I can be proud of. The rest of the
Yeah,
stuff I can't really control. I do feel like we live in a time where like, I don't, there's so much music. TikTok is enormous.
yeah,
There are, people that are way bigger than me that are on TikTok that don't have an album like this, but they're just singing cover songs. Like, I have no idea what will make waves in the world that we live in right now.
sure.
Um, but I do know from an artistic standpoint, I'm really proud of this album, and I have been getting a lot of consistent feedback, like what you're saying about people feeling like it's the best album that I've ever made. And so I think to hear that after going through everything I've gone through with the changes in my career and my life, that feels awesome.
Plans for the future, then touring, etc. I mean, you could actually play this album from start to finish live. That would be a great show.
Yeah, my live shows changed a lot now that I've been doing. Now that I did this album, I used to play with tracks and a lot of synths in the back because there were like, that would play on a track behind a
Yeah, yeah.
band because there were a lot of that. There was a lot of samples and things like that going on in the music. And with this new album, I've wanted to get rid of all that. So it's just there are no tracks now. It's just me and a bass player, guitarist, and a drummer. And I feel a lot happier with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a lot more human. There's a lot of room to make mistakes and do things on the fly. And then as far as like what's in the works, I'm ready to write another album. I'm already going back in with Ryan and just continuing down this path of this sound. I think it's a really good match with me and Ryan, and I have other things I want to write about now. I have a lot of fuel for the fire, so but I have to balance that with being a mama.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But you're going to pass 500 live shows this year. I think when I counted them, it was 480 something or other, which, if you consider the lockdown, the pandemic, is pretty prolific. I mean, you've opened for Clapton, you played on Slash's Blues tour. What was your most memorable live experience?
my most memorable live experience was Coachella. Mostly because I felt like a warrior. It was like we ended a tour at Coachella and like there was so much hype around Coachella. It was like the peak of my first album, and everybody was like, wow, like, you know, it's a big show. There's a lot of pressure on it. And I just felt like we slammed it. We murdered it. And that felt really good. Like there was a ton of people there and everybody
Yeah.
was into it. And my band was like I said, we were just on fire. We had just come off the road doing like a full national tour. And I just remember like it was just one of those moments like walking off the stage afterwards where we just killed it. And so that was a really good memory for me because it's not always the case, I mean, there's so many things at play. Like, there could be a bad front of house and like, it doesn't matter how good you do on stage if the sound sounds bad. Like,
Yeah.
so it was just that perfect storm of it being like an awesome moment.
And tell me, Europe, have you heard of it at all? Or?
I would love to come more. I really would. I mean, it's
Come
just
more? When was the last time
when
you
did you
came?
ever? No, I know. Well, it's funny because the first tour that I ever did, I was opening for Alan Stone, and we did seven countries
did
in 7
the
days.
Jazz Cafe was the last.
I know.
last-
And then, no, I think we played London like once after that.
Did you?
I don't know why. I feel, and it's really weird because it's not on the fan side of things. Like, I feel like people want me to come over. I think it was more on the label side of things. At the time, I don't think the label had the right connections to get me over there.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a lot of opportunity to go over there. And then now, it's definitely something that I want to do more of. It's going to cost more for me to get over there right now, but I definitely
Big
I want to.
audiences over here for blues music. I mean, Samantha Fisher's over here all the time. Robert John and the Wreck, Bywater Call, The Damn Truth. I mean, there's a lot. There's a big core audience in decent sized venues. So I don't think you'd have any problem whatsoever. None.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, I have no idea what's going on in the world. We might, who knows? Maybe we'll live there soon. I don't. And then I'll definitely play there more.
And the objective. So, what if you had this sort of magic wand that you could wave to achieve your career objective? What is it that you want out of the music industry more than anything else?
Oh my gosh. I guess it would be cool to have some recognition. I think that, I think it would be great to be honored for my art, and win a Grammy. That would be awesome. But other than that, I feel like I'm doing it. I mean, what else can you really ask for? I mean, I would like to tour internationally. That would feel like, we're moving forward and we're doing bigger things, than just the US. But I think it's also in the feeling of the album. Like, if more people are coming out to these shows with the new album, and it's really getting, great recognition in the press and things like that, I think that'll feel like a win.